Okay, there's been some talk on the net, obviously a lot of chatter on the net right now about shortages of 5.56 ammo. We're also starting to see some confiscation situations, not on a large scale, but what's happening is if people have cases of ammunition, multiple thousand round orders that are being in transit from, let's say, FedEx or UPS, and they go through a transit depot where a law enforcement agency becomes aware of it and they think they can have an excuse to seize that ammo and make the person prove it's theirs, they would rather seize the ammo and then just pay the insurance coverage for the shipment than deal with their own ammunition shortages. So another thing that's happening right now is everybody knows of this shortage. Everybody knows that it's getting up to $1 or $2 a round with a lot of outfits. Here's part of what's going on is people are talking about how there was a little bit of funny business with shell corporations and friendly type stuff going on with these awards. But the most important thing to look at is on the government's own websites with the companies that actually do the contracts. What are they saying about this? Everything I can tell from these contracts having been panned in 2012 is most of this ammo has never been delivered. These are long-term contracts to provide certain merchandise at certain prices in certain volumes on order from certain agencies. This is not something like somebody just pulled up in a great big semi-truck and said, yeah, you got to fill that with ammo and that's ours now, and they have it in some kind of a supply. That is not what is going on with these people. What they did was they signed a series of contracts to obtain the ammunition over time for a certain price. If you look at the frequently asked questions part of the GSA contract website, you can see how a lot of those rules work. One of the things that's going to be in violation of these contracts is if those agencies don't pay for the merchandise. Now, they have up to 30 days after delivery to pay. The thing is, if they don't pay, the companies that provide the merchandise can cancel further deliveries and say, listen, it's a bad contract, we're not getting paid, we don't have to deliver something that we know that we're not going to get paid for. But there's a 30-day thing on this. Now, there's also there's a lot of rules on the way these contracts work, but the general gist of it is nobody's obligated to provide this stuff for no pay. If we look at some of the other rules, in a way, if there's a deviation from the normal payment schedule, what some of the rules and obligations are. But everything I'm finding in these is that if they don't do a declared state of emergency, nobody has to deliver merchandise that they know isn't getting paid for. So those contracts become a little bit one-sided in the event that the government agencies are not paying for the stuff. So here's the thing. We've got a market right now where the civilian market demand for this ammunition is very high. A lot of these companies know that anything the government doesn't buy, they can sell on the open market for more money. Now, normally, the government's going to obligate them to make good on all of those contracts, or else they can be punitively fined, or they would not be awarded other contracts in the future. The punitive fines only come into play legally if the companies, on their own prerogative, decide to cancel the contracts and not provide the merchandise and go provide it elsewhere for more money. Now, that varies a little bit from contract to contract. For example, if Home Depot is a GSA contract provider, that's why if you go to Home Depot, there's certain checkout counters where they'll say, well, if you're buying stuff on a GSA schedule, GSA credit card, it's a little bit different terms and price schedule. That merchandise is still subject to prior sale. They are under no obligation to hold merchandise for the GSA contracts. Now, on the ammunition contracts, they have an obligation that lasts only as long as they're getting paid for it. Okay, so where does that put us on the Fiscal Cliff issue? Okay, here's the thing. We're looking at the fact that with all this gun control stuff that they've been arguing, all this stuff that the Democrats want to enforce, that's been done in the background of seriously depleted ammunition supplies in U.S. government stockpiles, because there was this long-term assumption that all of the wars in the Middle East that the United States has been involved with since the end of the Cold War were somehow all going to get covered out of the old Cold War stockpiles, and there would be something left over indefinitely. And that has not been the case. The Cold War stockpiles are largely depleted at this point, and with the new gun law stuff, guess who got caught with their pants down? Because they were doing funny money budgeting all along. Okay, the federal government. The federal government has depleted its ammunition stockpiles. They've been doing funny money budgeting for a long time. And you know why there isn't going to be some great big major martial law gun enforcement? They don't have the means to do it. They got caught with their pants down. I'm looking at all of these issues on that GSA contract, and I can tell you right now with a high level of confidence, most of the ammo, most of these millions of rounds that they supposedly have on these contracts has never been delivered. If that Fiscal Cliff thing crashes and they have what they call a shutdown of essential government services, okay, first of all, this is all contingency purchasing and contingency planning. I don't even think this is at the core of essential government services. What happens during the Fiscal Cliff situation, if they don't come to a bunch of resolutions on the federal budget, is that contingency spending gets dropped off pretty early on. There's not a lot of union stuff involved with whoever, picks up that shipment of ammo and delivers it somewhere. They're going to be on top of government wages as the highest priority, which means that if they don't place a very high priority on paying for this all ammunition, the producers of that ammunition are going to, okay, fine, we're going to sell these batches on the open market. They'll gladly buy it. We'll pay taxes on that money, but we're not going to deliver this merchandise without getting paid. And because of the cost of production on this and the way those contracts got negotiated to begin with, even if they are forced to deliver some of the stocks that they have, they're not going to have the money to pay for the raw materials to produce more ammunition. The private enterprise companies will have the money to pay for the raw materials to produce more ammunition, especially for the companies that never won a government contract because the government had blacklisted them in some way as being non-compliant with their standards or non-compliant with policies. Even though the companies were compliant with the law, if they never got the contracts to begin with, they are going to be the people holding the cash to pay for the raw materials to make ammunition, while the guys who aren't getting paid on the government contracts are going to be broke. Which means that the government thing of having 750 million rounds of 5.56 ammo, it's a paper tiger. I don't think they have it. I don't think they're going to be able to get it. And they're in competition with the open market right now to get what little they can get. And even if they do get in that competition, they're in competition with other government agencies, and the Department of Defense is going to come first, okay? They're not going to give it to some third-party law enforcement agency when you're talking about the Department of Defense needing to be able to keep up supplies for the wars overseas. The guys, the priority is not going to work in the favor of obscure federal agencies that may or may not be planning some kind of a martial law thing. The question is how they can handle that production versus demand for these contracts. If they declare a state of emergency and have these contracts fulfilled no matter what, then that's going to be the prelude to martial law, because it becomes a higher priority than things like keeping the food stamp program afloat or making government wages work or avoiding the mass government layoffs. So we want to pay very close attention to the way these DSA contracts are being handled, because as far as I can tell, the majority of this ammunition that Alex Jones has talked about a lot has never been delivered. Okay, it has never been delivered. They made a deal to pay for it. They made a deal to get it at these prices. I don't think it's been delivered. If anyone has any better information than I do on that, please share it in the comments or a response video. But I've got a reason. This is why we're not going to see a whole lot of major government action in the next couple months on this gun grabbing issue, except for a lot of talk and a lot of saber rattling. But there are some things to be aware of. The possibility of shipments being seized in transit, because it's very easy for them to do. The possibility for large wholesale stockpiles to be seized very possibly can happen, simply because they want it and are capable of taking it. I'm going to do a little follow-up video after I get this off uploaded, but if you have ammunition, consider hiding some of it. Consider buying or selling whatever you want to buy or sell prior to any major laws taking effect, because the question is going to be, the government is going to be out of this stuff very quickly. They've already been doing funny numbers to keep the wars up in the Middle East. They're already, when you look at the way the government's been supplying the insurgents in Syria and everything, they had to confiscate the weapons and ammunition from somewhere else. This isn't quite like with the Contras, where a lot of it was being clandestinely produced in the United States and then remarked and made it look like captured enemy equipment. This has been something where they had to pick it up in one country, deliver it to another country. So we're going to see a little more of what's going on here in the next video.